Hello and welcome back to the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. Having been long in the creative shadows of Paul and John, George Harrison unleashed All Things Must Pass onto the world with little expectation of its impact. What began as a vast collection of penned-up songs blossomed into a beautiful triple album, unexpectedly revealing Harrison's profound songwriting talent. Despite its length, Phil Spector's dense production and Harrison's own relatively low profile at the time, All Things Must Pass stands as a monumental and deeply cherished album in the post-Beatles landscape. Joining me to discuss this album is my co-host, Mr. Felipe Amarin. How you doing, bro?
Doing really well, man, and you?
Cool, man. Yeah, all good here, all good here. I must admit, I've been a bit nervous about this episode for a while. You and me, we can talk about music all day long, and that's not the hard part. The hard part is tackling such a monumental album, and isn't it rock music's first ever triple album as well?
Probably,
right.
yeah.
So not only is it one of the greatest albums ever, not only is it recorded by a Beatle, not only is it one of these landmark peaceful albums, but it's a triple bloody album. It's like,
it's too much, isn't it?
How do we navigate?
There's no way we can scratch the surface of this album with one hour.
I imagine if this is episode 103, maybe episode 203, we'll sort of come back and revisit it and talk about all the stuff we didn't do. But anyway, I'll run you through as normal a few little background details of the album. But before I get them up, I will give you guys the requested terms and conditions, please, which is that if you're listening to us on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, it would do us a massive favor if you could scroll down, hit the 5 stars, write us a little line about what you think of us as a podcast. And what that does is it puts us further up the charts so we can be seen by more people. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date with our content. So, All Things Must Pass by George Harrison, released on the 27th of November 1970. Apart from one song, the rest of the album was recorded between May and October of 1970 at the EMI, Trident, and Apple Studios in London. It is generally a rock album. Some may consider there to be some folk rock in there. And it lasts 106 minutes, which is equivalent to 1 hour 46 minutes. And it was released on the Apple label and produced by George Harrison and Phil Spector. So first, you want to talk about some background, yeah?
Yeah, so it's impossible not to mention the Beatles breakup as not an inspiration for the album, but part of what generated the album.
Yeah, maybe a reason for this album.
Yeah. Well, basically, a lot of those songs were written during his time with the Beatles. And I've seen an interview with George where he goes on about having like a quota of songs per album, and he's joking about it. It's like, you know what, I wanted to release a lot of songs. I was writing a lot of songs, but they would let me put 1 or 2 songs per album. So they said, okay, maybe it would take another 100 albums for me to actually put all my music out there.
Yeah.
So I need to do my own thing. So as soon as the Beatles decided to officially break up, he started working relentlessly on this album and doing backing tracks and guide tracks, and getting the musicians together. And then the funny thing is he went to record Instant Karma with John Lennon. So to collaborate with John on that track, and Phil Spector was producing it apparently. And then basically, according to George, he said, well, Phil needed a job, I needed a producer, whatever. So he called him again. So he knew him from his work with the Beatles previously, and he was happy to have him.
I paused you there for 2 seconds just to tell the listeners that any song we mention in the episode is in a dedicated episode playlist that you'll see down in the description and the show notes. So we're doing All Things Must Pass. The whole album will be there in the Spotify playlist, and anything else we mention, including, which I'm just about to put in now, Instant Karma by John Lennon, because Felipe mentioned it. So yeah, please carry on.
So basically, there's so Phil Spector started listening to the demos, and he was like, "There's so much in here, man. There's so many songs. It never ends. Like an endless list of amazing songs." And he said, "George, you got to do this. You start recording and inviting the musicians and start producing it." And George co-produced the album with Phil Spector. Well, there's a couple of things about production he disliked, but anyway, the idea was like he had so many songs, he had so much to say, and the Beatles wouldn't allow him to do so, which is a shame when you think about it. When you think that All Things Must Pass, the song should have been a Beatles song. It
you
would
imagine
have
how
been
lovely it
part
would
of
have
Let
been?
It Be, and it's much better than everything else
Yeah.
in the last Beatles album.
How yeah, and how lovely would it have been hearing some of these songs done by or sung by Paul, sung by John.
Yeah.
I mean, we're treated to some of Ringo's drumming, but let's talk about, in general, um, his post-Beatles identity, because this album really, really shaped him and
Yeah.
showed to the world, I'm more than just a rhythm guitarist. Or I suppose he was lead as well, wasn't he? I am more than just a guitarist of the Beatles. And being in the shadow of John Lennon and Paul McCartney, two of the greatest songwriters, arguably, ever to have existed. People put them in the same breath as, in terms of composers and melodies like Beethoven. I was reading somewhere that there's a list somewhere of who wrote the most melodies in the world, and you've got Schubert, Franz Schubert, the classical composer, up at top. There's, I don't know, I'm going to make this up, but someone like Frank Zappa, a jazz composer, second, and then John Lennon and Paul McCartney in third, because they were just a powerhouse of writing good music that worked, and they worked together. And in the last few albums, or the last two albums, I'd say, you really start to hear where George Harrison fits into it. And as the Beatles sound evolves and they become a little bit more progressive, a little bit more unorthodox, trying different things out, it's George's songs that make those albums from a 9 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. I'm thinking songs like Something, I Me Mine.
Yeah.
Those songs are just, for me, the difference in those last few albums from being incredible albums to almost perfect.
Well, I think Abbey Road is one of my favorite all-time albums. I've listened to it a million times since I was a kid. And it's at some point in time, because I don't know about you, but I keep changing which ones are my favorite songs. And I didn't know anything about, who's writing, who is singing. I couldn't identify the voices. I didn't know who was George, who was Paul, whatever.
Yeah.
So I was listening to the album and I said, oh, you know what? Here Comes the Sun and Something are the two most beautiful songs in the album. And then in the future, I came to realize, oh, those are both George Harrison songs.
Yeah.
And maybe not the best songs in the album, but when I say the most beautiful songs, yes, they are. They have that they have that kindness and that
peacefulness.
Yeah, peacefulness and love in them, and it just makes you appreciate life in a way. So it's almost like all his songs are about observing reality and thinking about how amazing it is to be alive. I think there's a lot of this in his music.
Yeah, and especially in this album, it comes through.
Yeah.
But
so basically he wanted to do all those things with the Beatles, and it's such a isn't it a pity?
Very good, very good. No, I completely agree with you, man. And I think to do it so soon after the Beatles broke up, it's almost obvious that he was just desperate to come out and be like, world, listen to my music. And it's hard, man, because if the Beatles were crap, you'd kind of be like, oh, I can understand why George released a triple album. But because John and Paul were so good, were we together when we watched that? Oh shit, what's it called? The documentary that Peter Jackson did.
Oh, is it?
It was the recording. Yeah, Get Back. That's it.
No, I never watched the whole thing. No, I started it. It was fun time to watch the whole thing.
It was pretty good, but you can see George's frustration throughout that whole process. Not really, Ringo's Ringo, all right? Ringo will just sit and plod along in the background and do what he needs to do. But George became a creative force in the Beatles, as we just discussed, through the songs that he gave to the last couple of albums. And you can hear his frustration in Get Back when he's not being listened to. His ideas are not being... they're being heard, but John's like, well, it's my song. And Paul's like, oh, well, I want it to go like this. And with two powerhouses like John and Paul, who is George Harrison to be like, actually, this is wrong? And after this album, I feel like if John and Paul were up here with their songwriting, at the end of the Beatles, maybe George is here, but all things must pass. Bring George up to the level of them. Don't you think?
Well, the thing is, the few songs that the Beatles allowed him to put in the albums are all great.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah, and
so
for him to realize,
and it makes you think maybe there's not too many George Harrison songs because he only wrote those ones.
Yeah,
or because those are the only good ones. I don't know. This is something I couldn't quite confirm, but one of the songs in All Things Must Pass, I just want to get this right because I'm not quite sure if the expression means what I think it is.
Okay.
Run off the mill.
Okay.
Well, you're the native speaker here. Do you know what
Yeah.
that means?
It means normal. I'm
it
just
means
gonna
kind of mediocre, isn't it? Kind of
well,
like average or
yeah.
something
So
like that.
if I Google what does run of the mill mean, it means lacking unusual or special aspects, ordinary.
So apparently that's something he heard from Paul about his songs, or about one of his
Ah,
songs. So that's why he wrote
interesting.
the song. So there's like, it's like Paul saying to him, what you do is very average.
Yeah.
No, the thing is, we were not there. I wasn't there in the room, but I don't think George would just make this up.
No.
So I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
song is about how he felt about the other Beatles not thinking he was up to the standards of the band as a
Yeah.
songwriter. I don't think he had. So the I must say this Ringo is such like a cool character and so one of the best guys in the music industry because
Yeah.
when you think about it, he is the only one who collaborated with all the other Beatles after the breakup
Yeah.
because no one had actual issues with him. So apart from Ringo, I think no one really appreciated George and the band, not as much as he deserved to be appreciated. But it's part of his personality to not fight back, I think.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, when they first started, they all had nicknames. So that was the way the media wanted to sell them. And he was the quiet Beatle.
Right.
So that really sums up what he was as.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on in his mind and his soul, but he wouldn't put it out.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, just to finish off this section that we've been doing about the artistic achievement, I mean, we spoke about, the unreleased songs, it is a pity, as you said, that Isn't It a Pity was rejected by them and All Things Must Pass. God, I listened to the song All Things Must Pass and you think, my God, how good would it have been? And this is not taking away from what George released because George's song is a 10 out of 10 song on its own. But just imagine, it's weird what I'm saying because I'm saying if the Beatles did it, it would be better. And I'm not saying that, but imagine it could be. Imagine that the final song on the final album of the Beatles is All Things Must Pass with John, George and Paul all singing it, harmonies, and maybe a great middle eight written by Paul or something. Do you know what I mean?
And it would be a great way to
end the career.
Say goodbye. Yeah, that's the great farewell. Like All Things Must Pass, including the band.
I get goosebumps thinking about what we could have had. But in the end, things happen the way they happen, and we're lucky enough to get the first ever triple studio album by a solo artist, which in itself is such an ambitious achievement. To have that level of creative output where, God, it's like you sit there and you think, we've been in recording sessions where we've had 15 songs to go into a studio with, and we'd be like, we have to talk to the artist and be like, right, well, we could only really fit 10 on the vinyl. What are we getting rid of? What are we going to cut down? What doesn't go in? George was like, fuck that. Just put them all out.
Release all of them.
But there's not, I mean, there are some songs far better than others, but I'd still say the worst song on this album is a 7 out of 10. They're all of such good quality.
Well, there's something about it, though. I believe he's kind of like breaking barriers here when it comes to song promotion and like releasing. Think about the whole marketing behind a record label. You got enough songs for 3 albums. Well, so we can release one every 6 months or one a year, and produce and release the singles. Do all that marketing strategy.
Yeah.
And he wasn't into that kind of stuff. He was like, I'm writing songs, I'm recording songs. When I think I'm done, I'm going to release them. And so he wasn't bothered about how many songs or if it's going to be a double, triple album. He just wanted to put those songs out. That's, for me, that's like a true artist.
I was just going to say, the sign of an artist.
Write stuff, release stuff, and I want people to listen to what I have to say. There's nothing about marketing or we need to promote this in a certain way, or we need only this certain amount of songs for an album. We can't have instrumental tracks in the album. There's no criteria. I think the only criteria is if I think it's good, I'm going to do it.
Spot on, bro. What you said about the artist part, where he's just, that is the sign that this poor artist has been left, with just a plethora of songs to get out.
Yeah, and apparently he decided to like finish and release the album when when the accountant from Apple Corps came to him and said, "Look, we need the deadline for we need to know when you're going to finish this," and he was like, "All right, yeah, let's do it. Let's finish. Let's release whatever I've got up to this point."
Oh,
so basically, he released everything he had all at once.
Amazing. Well, let's dig into the album and talk about the music and the lyrics behind it. I mean, the first thing, there's three things we're going to talk about in general in this section. And the first one I want to talk about is the production on it, because the production is just sublime. And we heard it, in the final few Beatles albums. They have this fantastic way of creating such a thick, densely layered sound where the guitars and the bass and the drums matter as much as the orchestration. And we have to thank George Martin for that. He was a fantastic producer in that sense. But this is not the Beatles. This is George Harrison with a new concept, a new idea, and a new theme to the album. We were then treated to Phil Spector's production, and as we know, his famous wall of sound production techniques. Yeah. And I think a perfect example for me is the song Wah Wah, where you just have this fantastic, all these layers of guitars, the horns, the percussion, just create this huge landscape, and it's almost overwhelming when you hear how many instruments are going on everywhere.
It's on the edge, isn't it? You're like, oh, is this too much? No,
but it's just reined in perfectly.
It's so melodic, that's why.
Yeah. The other songs I've got, What Is Life, just so rich, the instrumentation, the upbeat arrangements, it's just, this has this full production style. And I think when you talk about, we said All Things Must Pass, the orchestration on it, man, the mixing, the trumpets at the very end, it all just has this level of production that the production almost transcends. You listen to it and you think, how can someone produce something this well? Because there is so much going on. As we said before, it's almost overwhelming, but it's not. Yeah. What do you think about it?
Well, I think there's too many people involved. The amount of musicians that play on every track, it's a lot. So I think maybe, although some people might criticize Phil Spector's style, he found a way to make every instrument in the track being heard. So you can actually hear every detail. So that's why it's a bit overwhelming. It's all in there. It's kind of everything is in your face. Mm-hmm. But in a way, it doesn't sound louder than the vocals. It's just because the lyrics are so important. I think the lyrics are so important for George Harrison that if the instrumental parts were just too powerful, then it would take away from the quality of the melodies and lyrics. There's something about maybe that sort of big production style. It's a huge contrast with the simplicity of the chords and melodies and lyrics. There's something I noticed by reading the lyrics in the album. It's like they're all really short. Even when the song is 4 or 5 minutes long, there's 3 verses.
Yeah.
So, and I think the song that sums all of it up is My Sweet Lord, because I watched an interview with him explaining the song, and he said it was intended to be like a mantra. So it's, and he says the words repetition and simplicity. And I think that song's got nothing in terms of lyrics. It's 3 lines. But you don't even notice, you don't realize until you get to the end of it. If you actually don't have the lyrics in front of you, every time we do these episodes, I have the lyrics on the screen and I follow them when I'm listening. So I do want to listen to the album without paying attention to the lyrics, and I do another one just paying attention to the lyrics. And every time I see it, it's every time I looked into any lyrics from this album, it was they're so short. There's nothing there, but at the same time, there's everything. I think there's something about his songwriting style, something about the lyrics is there's no interpretation needed.
No, it's just there, isn't it? He's telling you what it's about.
Yeah. So when he's talking about bad feelings he had about his friends or his bandmates, you can hear it. It's all there. Isn't it a pity? So that phrase, it's there. When he wants to say that human beings don't treat themselves or don't treat each other nicely, he just says with those words. When he wants to say he loves someone, he just says it with those words.
Yeah.
So it's I love that, in rock music, you have a lot of poetry, and it's you need to dig into the lyrics and try to find the meaning. On the other hand, with with George, you have the beauty of simplicity. This is what I want to say, like as in a mantra. I'm going to repeat it until you get it. It's not designed to be hard to understand.
Yeah,
And
that's a
I
great
love
point.
that. And he always talked about his music as being simple, as not being like, oh, he never referred to himself as a composer or as anyone who's like, he used to say, like, when you say, I watched an interview with him, and the guy say, when you say you write music, do you write the notes on a paper? So no, I don't know how to write music. I don't know music theory.
Right.
I don't think I'm like a composer, like a classical musician. What I do, it's not even music. It's just a simple thing that I do. It's like he would play himself down in that sense, but like it's true. Like it's very, very simple.
Yeah,
and that's the beauty of it.
That's a great point. Let's stick with the lyrics themes then. And I think one of the obvious departures and statements of this album is his incorporation of philosophy and spirituality, especially, he took great interest in Hinduism and Eastern spirituality. And he did this earlier in '64, I think. It was with the Revolver album, because there's quite a bit of sitar on that album. And I think they'd gone over, did they tour India or something? And he went and he gained a massive interest in that. And, you got songs like, Awaiting on You All. Isn't that just like, what a great song, but it's so high energy. It's like a gospel rock track, isn't it? You kind of hear this religious undertones in there, and it's got direct references to like spiritual practice, cleansing power of chanting and faith. And like you said, mantras. Another one,
he criticizes the Pope on that one. So at the very end of it.
And then go on, to explain that one.
No, it's interesting because he talks about spirituality as kind of, in my view of that, is like he's talking about finding that spirituality inside yourself.
Yes,
it's not about organized religion. He's not necessarily saying that no one should follow a religion, but he's talking about finding your own spirituality. And then there's something about the Pope at the end. He says he owns 50% of General Motors. I think it's a take on him about you're talking about not being materialistic, but you have loads of possessions. Well, George Harrison himself had loads of possessions. So but the point for me is, he literally says no temples, no churches. You don't need those things. I'd like to think that he's not saying it's bad for you if you go to those places. I like to think that's like that in the end of the day, you're going to find your spirituality. You're going to find your true self within yourself. You don't need external influences for that. And I think the whole album is about him finding himself in a way. So that's why he's talking about the main themes for him. Like the band's breakup is in loads of lyrics. His love for the human race and his love for specific people as well, and his relationship with himself. I think the album is a lot. That's the spiritual side of the album. That is, I must say, the songs that clearly about that. Let me run through the whole list.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I can see like 2 or 3 different themes in the lyrics. So I would say, well, clearly, My Sweet Lord. That goes without saying. That's spiritual, and then you have. The other one would be All Things Must Pass. The Art of Dying. Art of Dying is one of my absolute favorites of this album. And of course, Hear Me, Lord.
And I'd add to that.
Awaiting on You All. Yeah.
Awaiting on You All. Yeah. I agree with everything you said, man. I mean,
Beware of Darkness. That's another one. See, it's like half of the album.
Yeah. All Things Must Pass is nice because it's not an out-and-out religious song, is it? Or spiritual. It's just talking about nature and impermanence and just how life. I feel like all these songs, whether they're slightly leaning a bit more towards religion or more towards the impermanence and cyclical nature of life, is it that he's just looking at life overview and saying, well, what's guiding my journey? What am I doing towards life? What do I believe in? What is the earth telling me? And I think All Things Must Pass is a nice sort of more natural side, whereas Hear Me, Lord is and My Sweet Lord is a bit more on the religious side. I mean, Hear Me, Lord, that's just essentially just a prayer. It's like he's written a prayer and just put music.
Well, the thing is, like, if you got into some meditation practices and praying and then you're recording an album. A lot of people would say, I'm not going to put this in the album because that's going to kind of segregate my fans who are not into the religious stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's you. That's who you are. Why wouldn't you put in the album?
Exactly.
So I think there was a little bit of a uncertainty from the label in regards to My Sweet Lord being so explicitly religious that they did say, well, is this like going to clash with the gospel market? Is this like not going to be seen as a good song because it's too religious, or is it going to be like is going to sound fake or whatever, or like religious people are going to get upset and non-religious people will get upset as well? So it's that kind of, I think people were not really comfortable with that song, but he didn't care, right? No, so this is me, this is how I think, this is what I feel. And the idea of the mantra is, if you think about the commercial side of music, writing as a mantra is quite clever, because if you don't get the lyrics first time around, they're going to come again and again and again and again. And then you end up singing, and that's like, it's a great formula to get people singing along. Like if you listen to the album at home, you go like catch a bus to go to work, whatever, and you start listening to that thing in your head because it's so repetitive, it's going to stick in your head forever. So I think commercially is a great idea. I don't think he was thinking of that, but it's
another byproduct of the album. Exactly.
It is.
Anything else to say on lyrics?
Well, just what I think is the themes I can see in the album, apart from the religious, spiritual side of it, is love and the Beatles breakup. I think it's clear. It might be about relationships in general, but when you think about the song "Wah Wah," there's a line for me that's him talking to Paul, maybe John, but most likely Paul. You made me such a big star, being there at the right time, cheaper than a dime. So he basically saying it's like kind of being thankful in a way that the Beatles made him the superstar he became, but on the way, criticizing them for not giving him enough room. Isn't it a pity is another one about that. And I would say that Run of the Mill, we talked about that. So all those songs, for me, him expressing how much, how he felt about not being heard in the band. And I think it's quite a big deal for him, because there's like in a lot of songs about that. And when it comes to the love songs, I just want to mention my favorite, which is What Is Life, because that song, that's Motown to me. So, but maybe that's part of another topic. But
well, that's where we are headed right now, which is to the fusion of genres in this album, because it has a cohesive sound through it, doesn't it? Undoubtedly, but you also have this fantastic blend. You've got rock, folk, gospel singing, country music here and there. You've got the Indian influences as well. And I mean, I'm just going to talk about a few songs right here. So My Sweet Lord, you've got that beautiful gospel style call and response vocals, but with pretty heavy rock instrumentation. And then the Indian spiritual mantras, the Hare Krishna, the chant and stuff, which really creates this, it's almost like a unique transcendent sound, because you're hearing rock music here. You've got the gospel call and response vocals, but then in your head, you're hearing like this call to prayer, call to religion. And it's just unusual. I remember hearing this for the first time a good few years ago, and I was sat there going, this is unusual. Like, I don't think I've ever heard anything like this before. And I don't know if I've ever heard anything like it again. Behind That Locked Door. Now, it's not one of the most spoken about songs of this album, but it really does have that country inspiration with it. The ballad, the pellets.
And apparently he wrote that one for Bob Dylan. So,
is that the one? Okay. Well, maybe that's why it's country inspired. You got the pedal steel guitar, and it just really showed. I thought this was the one that showed that George Harrison had this ability to just weave a variety of different styles into his own musical voice, because it's still a George Harrison song. It's not so different that it doesn't fit the album. It's still good, but it just has a different quality to it.
Folk and country, And for that, it's important to mention that Pete Drake is on pedal steel guitar on that song. He's a Nashville musician, right? And
There you
it's
go.
like, so he wanted to sound really country in a way. So you
Of
don't
course.
bring a pedal steel player for nothing,
Yeah, exactly.
That's such a,
Um,
it's one of my favorite instruments. I love the sound of it, and
yeah,
it has that unique presence in a song every time I have a pedal steel guitar. So because George does a lot of the slide guitar, so it's
yeah.
basically playing the normal guitar with a slide. But then in this case, you have a pedal steel guitar. So that's a, if you guys are not familiar with the instrument, look it up. It's a phenomenal
But
instrument and
beautiful
has a really
instrument.
particular sound,
Yeah.
and is really like related to American country music.
It
So I
just
think
yeah.
he wanted to bring that vibe.
As soon as you hear pedal steel, you think country, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
The song "Let It Down" as well. Really, these soft, intimate verses with these kind of explosive, more heavy rock choruses, which just again, dynamics in this album, such a big part. Because you sat there and you need low dynamics in songs like My Sweet Lord, but then when the dynamics are brought up for songs like Wah Wah, it just shows you that this album is not a monotone journey. It's not all peace and Hare Krishna and religion. There are ups and downs in terms of the dynamics and as well as the lyrics. What he's really happy with religion, criticizing others for religion. Really happy that Paul and the Beatles gave him his fame. Upset that they didn't take his songs. It's a massive journey. And the other final one I want to mention is Apple Scruffs, which really is just Bob Dylan-esque. Just the country acoustic guitar, very simple, very folky. And when you compare it to some of the songs that have this such rich layer of instrumentation, Apple Scruffs is nice and
Do
stripped
you
back.
know who are the Apple Scruffs?
No.
Those are, so that's the way they called the fans that would stay outside the Apple Corps building, just waiting for the Beatles to like get in and or out of the building. Like they were literally the fans that were there all day.
Yeah.
Not only outside Apple's building, but like Abbey Road Studios, everywhere they used to go. So that's like a way of him to say thank you. And he invited some of those fans to get into the studio to listen to the final mix of that song. So
wow, oh nice. A man of the people is George, isn't
yeah.
he? Cool. I mean, that's all I've got in terms of the music and lyrics side of it. Did you have anything else, or should we move on to the next part?
Well, let me see, man. I've got so many notes.
I
It's like
know
it never ends.
we're trying to get for viewers and listeners. We're trying to get through this. We might be a bit quick because we want to keep it to an hour. We've heard your feedback. We know that anything over an hour becomes a bit of a. You might have to listen to it over 2 days, over 2 journeys to work. So we're trying to keep it under our normal hour length. But at the same time, there's so much to get in. So forgive us if we're moving quickly. We're just trying to fit in all the points.
Okay, I know one thing I need to say. So the influence of Bob Dylan is
yes,
it's remarkable in a way, because I'd have you anytime. The first song.
Let me segue into our next section, which will be collaborations.
So
there you go. So go on, you kick us off.
Right. So first collaboration in the album is "I'd Have You Anytime," written with Bob Dylan. So it's a typical Bob Dylan kind of song. And
sorry, isn't that also a statement? Starting your album with a co-written song.
Yeah.
Again, just another example of someone saying, "I just want you to hear my music. I don't care if it's been co-written. I just want you to hear it."
Yeah, and it's not like because I'm no longer a member of a band. It doesn't mean I don't collaborate with people. It doesn't mean so. It's not entirely about himself. The collaborations are like a huge part of the album. Yeah. And when you said like, well, maybe if the song was recorded by the Beatles, do you know what? I'm glad they were not recorded by the Beatles, because he managed to bring such an amazing group of musicians that brought those songs to life in a way that I think no one else could have done it, not even the Beatles.
Well, we'll go through them in a second. But yeah, carry on what you're saying about
so I'd Have You Anytime is a song written with Bob Dylan. There's a Bob Dylan song as well in the album, isn't it? If Not For You. Yep. I think that's actually Bob Dylan. I might be wrong, but and Behind That Locked Door is a message to Bob Dylan. Maybe George said it's like acknowledging Bob Dylan's shyness. And it's just saying, like, because I think at some point Dylan wasn't self-confident enough to perform live and didn't believe people would like what he was doing. So that's a message to him. We've just talked about the song, but it's a message to Bob Dylan. So it's interesting to have that. Okay. But now collaborations, right? Who you want to talk about? Because we've got Ringo, we've got Alan White, we've got Peter Frampton, we've got Clapton. Everyone is in there.
Yeah, let's start with Clapton. I mean, he's again, and this is another thing I wanted to say about this. I'll say it a bit more in my monologue at the end, but to have people of this level and magnitude want to be on your album. But we know Clapton is an admirer of other musicians. He was so desperate to be in the band, Eric Clapton. He was so desperate to play with
the band.
The band is called The Band. We make the joke every time, but in case you didn't know, the band is called The Band. Clapton was desperate to be with them. And, just to see all these people turn up and do their part for George, again, it's a testament to George. But none of the songs, I can't remember what album is it we did a few episodes ago where the collaborations really stood out because of these people in there. It was Alice Cooper. Yes. Where you obviously heard this guitarist, you obviously heard this vocalist. These guys, despite their level of fame and notoriety at this point, they're still just background musicians or session musicians, you know what I mean? And they do their job perfectly. So Clapton's guitar work, I mean, wah wah, proper distinctive, fiery, crisp guitar tone, beautifully fits into the wall of sound. If Not For You, again, it's subtle, his guitar contributions in this one, because it's a subtle kind of song, but it really helped shape the kind of the folk around it. We know what Clapton did with Cream, influencing these blues, these little folk bits here and there, which really complemented Harrison's slide guitar, I thought, in that song.
Yeah, I think there's something about Clapton's participation, which is he wasn't credited at first. I think he wasn't credited on all the songs he played, because of contract bullshit. Basically, a label wouldn't allow an artist to participate on another label's album. So I don't think he got the credit at first. But then George later said that Clapton pretty much played in every song.
Oh wow, really?
Not every song, most of them. He says he plays the very first note in the whole album. At the beginning of the first song. So it's like he was there from the beginning, and he collaborated with every song in a way or in one way or another. And most of the time when Clapton wasn't available, he would have Peter Frampton. So like, come on, man. Like that's your second choice, right? So I've seen an interview with Peter Frampton talking about that, because that was before his success as a solo artist. He was playing with a band called Humble Pie, and George was a fan of his guitar playing, but he didn't know about it. So he had a friend in common with George, and this guy, I think it was George's personal assistant or whatever, he worked with George. And they were walking down Wardour Street, very close to a place where I used to live a couple of years ago. And he was basically, he said, "You want to come and see George?" So George, who's George? George Harrison. Say, what do you mean? Yeah, he's Trident Studios, just go there, just talk to him. I said, yeah, of course, I'm a big fan of the Beatles. So he went there, and when he walked into the room, George said, "Hi, Pete," and was like, "Are you talking to me? Like, do you know who I am?" And it was like, and then the conversation just went naturally into, I wanted to play on my next album, and it was like, seriously, you want me in the album? So okay, so they started jamming, and it was like, and he's playing rhythm guitar, and then George does, I wanted to play lead. And it's like, but you're a lead guitar player, George. No, it's like, it's not about me. I'm going to play the rhythm, you play the lead. Amazing. And then Peter Frampton was super happy to be part of it. I think one of the big things of collaborations is like, if you have the money, which any former Beatle would have, you can hire anyone. But there are people who are actually, they really want to be part of it. So Clapton and Frampton, and Billy Preston, all those guys wanted to be there. So it's not like it's not like a job. You go there, record your part, and then you leave the room. They wanted to be part of it. I think there's a lot of passion in everyone's playing on the album, and it's a lot of people.
Well, there is. I mean, you mentioned him. Let's talk about Billy Preston. Known as the fifth Beatle because of his contributions to with the piano and organ playing in their last few albums, or I think the last two albums.
Abbey Road and Let It Be.
And
George brought him into the band, so it was George's idea to have him with them.
And it's the same thing here. His organ playing just influences this gospel sound. It plays such a huge part. He plays in My Sweet Lord and Let It Down. And it's just, as you said, he brought someone in because he knew that they knew how to do the job. And what Billy Preston does all the time is adding texture, adding depth, adding character because why would you get a classical pianist to come in and play an organ sound when you need character behind it? As much as the love I have for classical music, you know, and maybe the listeners know that I love it. But what classical musicians do is they play what is on the sheet written. If they need to play expressively, the sheet will tell them to play expressively.
Yeah.
With songs like this, you need someone to vibe and to groove with the song, and Billy Preston does exactly that. Shall we talk about Ringo?
And well, as you're talking about keyboard players, got to mention Gary Brooker, isn't it? Who plays? I just need to find the exact song. Yeah, that was. Which one is it? Because there's a song that I love the intro. I just don't want to get the name wrong. Oh yeah, Let It Down. Because there's a heavy start on the song. There's a heavy riff right at the beginning, and it just becomes so soft, and it's led by the piano. So that's Gary Brooker, who played with a band called Procol Harum. If you're not familiar with them, the most famous song is "Whiter Shade of Pale." Can you find that last? Because I know
I'll add it in. Yeah, sure.
That to. So he's an iconic, British keyboard player, and again, is someone who's got a name and has got like a reputation in the business, and also wanted to be part of the album. And his contribution on piano is just this song. When you listen to the piano, it's the one part where I had to stop and start the song again because I wasn't paying attention to the lyrics anymore because the piano is just so beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah. So you can, and also sorry.
Go on. No, did you want to say something about keyboards?
No, the apart from him and Pete Drake playing steel guitar, as I mentioned, so many musicians. I'm going to mention some of my favorites who are there. Ringo on drums in a lot of songs.
Well, I was just going to say,
Alan White, who played with John Lennon, and yes.
Yeah. So I was going to this section. We can call this section drummers because we've got Ringo Starr, Alan White, and Ginger Baker as well.
He's on the jam at the end, right?
He is, yeah. So Ginger Baker played on "I Remember Jeep" along with John Lennon and Yoko. But that song was the one that was recorded in '68 or something. That was the one that was recorded before this recording session. But even so, Ringo Starr and Alan White. I mean, I didn't know until you told me Alan White was on it. But in terms of Ringo's drumming, I mean, he does what he does so well, and he gets so much shit, or he did get so much shit from fans, fans and non-fans of the Beatles, because he's just an ordinary drummer. And the Beatles are moving on. I'm being sarcastic for anyone who can't tell. The Beatles are moving on. They're playing more intricate stuff, but Ringo's still there just doing his beat. But that was Ringo's job. That's what he did. And because he did it so well, that's why he is one of the best rock drummers to have done it. Maybe not technically, maybe not skill-wise, maybe not the fills he could play, but doing his job. And he does the same here. He plays on Isn't It a Pity with just steady, expressive drumming that just really gives the song the power and the emotional weight that it needs. My Sweet Lord as well. His rhythm just works as like almost an anchor, just giving the song groove, providing a foundation for it. And once you have that foundation of drums, the vocal layers and the harmonies and the instrumentation all builds on that. And with a song like My Sweet Lord, having that foundation there, like a lot of gospel music, is just so important.
Yeah, exactly. And Ringo, he had that swing and that groove that you can't find in any other drummer. So to the point that he said he finally acknowledged his own quality as a drummer when he went to America and met some of the best drummers in the world. And they all said to him, the producers would ask them to play like Ringo.
Wow.
So all the best drummers in the world would go to a studio to record, and the producer, can you do this like Ringo? Can you play a Ringo drum fill? Can you play a Ringo groove? And Ringo said, wait a minute, maybe I'm doing something right.
Yeah, if everyone wants to sound like me, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So then when you have George doing his first solo album, there's no way he would let Ringo out of it.
Yeah, of course. Do you want to talk about Alan White? But what song did he play?
Alan White, well, isn't it? Oh, I need to check now because the list goes on. Most of the songs, there's not. I think we have. There's more drummers in the album, but Alan White. I think he plays the very first one. I might be wrong about it, but what's the first one? I'd Have You Anytime, because it's like brushes. So there's a lot of brushes rather than sticks in a few songs. Most of them are played by Alan White, and so he's famous for his work with Yes, but he also did like stuff with John Lennon and George Harrison before he joined the Yes, because he was like doing studio work. I would have to check the list to tell you exactly which ones he played.
Well, I'm gonna look into it.
Wait a minute. I think. Did you find it?
Yeah, well, he plays on a few. Wah Wah, My Sweet Lord.
That's it.
Isn't It a Pity? Behind That Locked Door. Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp, Waiting on You All. But yeah,
it's interesting because like loads of the soft stuff is him on drums, and he's got quite a heavy touch when he plays with Yes, and he could do anything like this phenomenal drummer. I think it's like one of the most underrated drummers in rock history. People don't think he is, well, a lot of people don't even mention him when they talk about the best drummers out there. But I think Alan White has the same sort of personality as George. He wasn't doing anything to be recognized. So imagine that he played, or imagine that he is the guy who played Imagine, which is, so he did a lot of great stuff with John and George. So an important name in the Beatles history and the post-Beatles era.
Well, so, also you have other contributions. Badfinger. You have the guitarists Pete Ham and Tom Evans playing on that one. I think they played on My Sweet Lord, Wah Wah, and Awaiting You All. And there's also talk that the drummer or percussionist Mike Gibbons I think he's the Badfinger drummer, Mike Gibbons, but possibly contributed percussion. But it's not very well documented in terms of that. I think the thing to take away from this is that, what did George Harrison go and do after this? He went and did the Traveling Wilburys. And I wonder if this was like a precursor to the supergroup idea. Because check out, songs like, Art of Dying, Clapton's guitar, Ringo Starr's drumming, just really brought this ensemble and this chemistry of how to make, multiple famous musicians contribute well to a song without needing to show off.
Yeah,
I think, and I don't think George Harrison's thinking that. That's what I'm thinking.
Isn't it amazing when the music is much bigger than the musicians?
Yeah, I think that happens all through this album. Even Beware of Darkness. I don't know which of these specific guests was on that song, but just showing that you can play a song with restraint, and it doesn't have to be complex. You can be sensitive. Just playing for the song is what matters most. And I wonder if sort of Harrison saw this and saw his experience doing this album and thought, my God, well, if Clapton can come here and play on nearly every song, and Ringo's coming and do this, and Alan White's here, and Billy's doing this, why can't I make a supergroup? If I want to play with, I forgot his name, Tom Petty, and I want to play with these guys, why can't I just make a supergroup?
There's something about, I think, do you know what that makes me think? That when he was playing with the Beatles, he admired them, but he didn't feel like they admired him.
That's a great point, man.
And in this album, he brought a lot of musicians into the studio who he really admired.
Yeah.
And they all of them are big fans of his music. So it's like that's now a two-way thing, isn't it? It's not only, I'm working with people that I really admire and respect, but they don't give me the same amount of respect in return. And now with All Things Must Pass, it's clearly mutual
100%.
Admiration.
Let's move on to the final part where we'll talk about the cultural and historic impact of the album. I mean, the first thing I think here that's important is the mainstreaming of the spiritualness. Now, that's what this album is mainly famous for, I think. Forget it's a triple album, forget that it's George Harrison's first one after the Beatles. I think people always look at this and think about the religion. And you've got songs like we've said, Awaiting You All, My Sweet Lord, All Things Must Pass, that just bring this Eastern spirituality into the mainstream Western music. And that's why it's significant, because you don't normally hear this Eastern spirituality mixed with this stuff. The Hare Krishna mantra alongside the gospel lyrics, directly referencing the chanting and Awaiting on You All, but blending rock music with prayer. And messages of devotion and religion. It's just not normal, is it? I think it's nice.
And also, I think you can see those things nowadays. You can see the influence of Eastern culture into our culture nowadays more clearly.
Yeah.
But he was one of the guys who started it in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Being such a famous character.
100%. Critically, the critical success. I mean, the album was such a huge success. It reached number one on charts worldwide. Like literally, I think I saw the list of where it reached in the charts. And rather than me telling you it went number one in these countries, I'll tell you that it only didn't go number one in two countries where it went fourth and 10th, I think. I will go down and find them for you. Yeah, so in Japan and Germany, it didn't go to number one. Everywhere else it did, which is kind of significant as well. It stayed there for weeks as well, proving Harrison's strength. Post-Beatles, again, providing this evidence that he is more. I mean, man, sorry, I'm going off topic here. How good do you think it must have felt to have been George at this time and to see the success of the album and been like, my God, I've been validated?
I think, yeah, I think it's a relief for him as an artist. I don't think he was the kind of guy who was looking for fame, more fame and more recognition, but just the fact that he could put out the feelings he was so desperately trying to express, put those feelings out in form of music with loads of his true friends collaborating with him. I think it must have been a surprise to have the album doing so well in the charts. He mentioned later that he didn't care about the charts or that kind of stuff.
I think it's clear.
When you're at that point in your life when you don't need the money or the fame anymore, you got to do what you want to do, right? You got to do. So he didn't need to prove anything, right? You're a Beatle, you don't need to prove anything for the rest of your life. Yeah. So he was doing that because he wanted to say those things. He wanted people to connect with that side of him, and he wanted to bring to all of us, all over the world, a message of peace and love. It sounds like a cliche, sounds like the most cheesy thing you can put in a song lyric, but it's basically saying, let's talk about love. Let's talk about knowing yourself and finding your spiritual truth and being kind to people. So like there's absolutely nothing negative about his message. And I think it's such an amazing thing that he's done this album. As I would say, like, it might be an exaggeration, but it's like such a gift to humankind.
No, I agree. I think it's an album of proper peace and everlasting love. And at a time, peace was going on around the world at this time. It was the 70s, wasn't it? The hippie movement was well and truly, happened, and it was still going on. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just a different album because of that Eastern influence, because it's saying, listen to peace, listen to love. But look how these guys do it as well. Yeah. They have this religion over here that is more about just praising God. It's about enjoying nature and the world around you,
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, and the enduring legacy of the album, I mean, the influence of this album, you can't even measure it, can you? I mean, What Is Life continues even today. You hear it all the time to be celebrated for the infectious energy it brings, the production. The album's had numerous reissues and tributes paid to it. I mean, influence on artists. Again, how could you, I don't think with any Beatles or post-Beatles solo album, you could really limit the ramifications of how it influenced someone else. I mean, My Sweet Lord became the first number one solo by a former Beatle, which again, as we've just said, just goes to validate Harrison's place in the world without John and Paul with him.
Yeah.
Anyway, my God, yeah, we've done this about coming up to 53 minutes. Bro, I was so scared about this album. I thought we'd overrun. I thought we wouldn't be able to say what we've needed to say, but we've done it, and we've still got a few minutes to spare. I got my monologue to do, but is there anything else you wanted to finish off on?
What I want to say is it is probably, see if you agree with me, probably the best solo album by a Beatle. I think most of the fans agree with that.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say is the artwork I've got here on my background and the one you have on yours. So basically, Lars has got the original album cover. So this is a property that he bought, I think, in the late 60s or early 70s. I don't know. He bought this house, and that's like his garden, right? He was really into gardening. And he had those gnomes in the garden. Some people say it's a reference to the Beatles. There's 4 of them. Right. But anyway, I think they came with the property when he bought it, or he found them later, but they used to belong to the guy who lived at that property, who is mentioned in one of the songs, by the way. It's the name of the song again. I'll find it here. Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp. That's the guy who owned the property before him,
right?
Or many years before. And so in 2000, or 2001, I don't remember when they reissued the album. He decided to do this cover here that I've got on my background as a joke, That's the same picture, but he added some buildings and stuff to say, oh, that's the way the world is going. I was like destroying nature and building stuff. Those things are not actually there. But again, it's a reflection of all things must pass. Even that album cover, even the feelings and the stuff he was representing at the time, all of this is going to pass. And hopefully when all things are passing away, we still have a lot of George Harrison's music to listen to,
And we will forever. We will forever. Cool. Right, I will finish off with my monologue, and then we'll say our goodbyes. Bro, I'm so happy we've done this episode. Like, honestly, and for viewers and listeners, I was really nervous. I was like, how do we say what we need to say about a triple album?
There's no way to I don't know, to talk about this album properly, so that's the best we can do.
We've done it. Right.
I'm really glad I had the opportunity to listen to this album again and listen to it. Like, it makes your day better. If you don't have the time to listen to the whole album, listen to the first 4 or 5 songs, and then
100%.
And it's going to make your day better for sure.
100%. Right. Time for my monologue. George Harrison's All Things Must Pass is a seemingly special album for several reasons. The album seems to beautifully reflect the artistic freedom of an individual who for so long waited in the creative shadows of his peers in the Beatles. Their breakup for millions of people was a sad day, but for George, it seemed to open the floodgates to explore his own creativity, spirituality, relationships, and music. The rock elements initially experimented with in his Beatles work now seamlessly intertwined with spiritual depth, folk melodies, and unorthodox chord progressions, resulting in a triple album of monumental quality and marking the moment that George Harrison became a force unto himself. The lyrical themes seem to almost foreshadow a period of reflection and a deeper connection to his inner self, the world around him, religion, and love, turning the album into an almost spiritual journey without him or us fully grasping its long-term impact at the time of release. His voice, often layered and executed with a gentle sincerity, carried these messages of hope, acceptance, and the transient nature of Earth. Couple this with the rich, densely layered production of the album, it creates a really immersive and contemplative experience. You don't have to be religious to feel the profound sense of searching and understanding that the music beautifully executes. This is George Harrison's definitive statement as a solo artist and shows his full, quick growth after years with a legendary but ultimately restrictive band format. Although the collaborations are great and each guest plays their part, the album unapologetically and unashamedly is George's success and his statement to the world. There's an argument that the album has a bigger impact because it came after the Beatles. Would it have had the same attention and renown had it been someone else's album other than George's? Even if the answer is no, it still stands as a fantastic, peaceful piece of work that I don't think can help but put a smile on everyone's face when they listen, be them religious, spiritual, or none of the above. It's an album that every music fan knows exists and deserves to be so.
Wow. Yeah, man.
I could have written 5 more paragraphs about the instrumentation, the lyrics, the chord progressions, the songs, but it doesn't need it, man. It's just a peaceful album.
The message is the most important thing with this album.
Exactly. Oh, well, brilliant. Nice. Yeah. Well done. Guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it. As I said at the start, a few little terms and conditions that we'd ask of you. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify or Amazon, please go down and give us a little review. Just hit the 5 stars, write us a sentence, and it's going to make a world of difference for us because every time you post a review, we get seen by more and more people. The algorithms change, we fly up the charts, and we're going to be seen and heard by more people. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to share this episode with any Beatles fan or George Harrison fan you know. Make sure you and they like and subscribe to stay up to date with our content. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for being with us again, guys. Give the album a spin or 2 and enjoy the music.
I'll take a few days.
Yeah, don't take a few days. Yeah, it's a long one.
It's worth it though.
If you don't know the album, you won't be disappointed. If you know a couple of songs, listen to the rest of it. It's great. Thanks for being with us. Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
As usual, guys, take care and long live rock and roll.